Welcome to the Left Foot, Right Foot podcast. It's a brand new podcast. This is our launch show. What is Left Foot, Right Foot podcast? Well, it's a podcast basically around my book that just launched last month, which is called Left Foot, Right Foot Survival Guide for Business and Life. And it's a motivational book about lessons I learned in my 40-year career of building 12,000 houses. So on this new show, it's going to be a non-political show, no politics, unless, we're goofing around. We're going to have fun. It's going to be a cross between the Joe Rogan show and the David Rubenstein show. And every week, I'm going to have an incredible guest on the show. Over the last 20 years, I've been up at the golf course in Palm Beach, and I've met incredible giants of industry. And as long as I don't talk politics, they're happy to come on my show and discuss the successes, the failures, the fun, the disasters of their business career. And more importantly, they're going to discuss the lessons they learned in all the years of being in business. So it's going to be a fun show about lessons in life. And you can learn lessons from the CEO of a Fortune 50 company, or you can learn lessons from somebody that sweeps houses. In my career, I'll never forget, I had all these communities that I would visit maybe once a month, a community. And of course, the project manager wanted to talk to me. But before I would engage with the project manager, I would walk around and go into some houses under construction myself. And the first thing I would do is I would try and meet the guy, the laborer that's sweeping the houses. And I would go up to him and I'd introduce myself and I would talk to him. And I would learn probably more from that guy than anybody. He would always say to me, "Mr. C, do me a favor, come out to the dumpster with me. Let me show you what I threw away today." And I'd go out to the dumpster with a laborer that was sweeping the houses, and he would show me kitchen cabinets that he threw away. He would show me wood. He would show millwork that he threw away. So it was really a cool experience, and my whole career I listened, and I didn't talk. And this fellow, although he was probably the least paid guy on the job site, was probably the most informative. The general manager of the job site wasn't going to tell me about misordering kitchen cabinets, but certainly the guy that was sweeping houses would. So this all came about, my book and everything. I was at my son, I have 4 children from 3 different women. I'm a train wreck myself, but, I've learned a lot in life from that experience. And if you want to hear a joke, it's from a guy who has 4 kids from 3 different women. Anyway, my third child, my first 2 went to Brown and Columbia. My third went to University of Pennsylvania. And I was at his commencement exercise for the Wharton School, and it was incredible. University of Pennsylvania might be the best business school in the country, and the commencement speaker was like a third-rate PBS anchor woman that had this narcissistic rant about her career and her life. And she was, University of Pennsylvania, you could have any alumni, giant of a hedge fund industry, or anybody that's a celebrity running a great business, and yet they had a third stringer. And I sat in my chair thinking to myself, if I ever had an opportunity to talk at a commencement speech, the first thing I would do is I would tell the kids, stand up, hug the person to the left of you, to the right of you, and this is all about you. You did all-nighters, you had the ups and downs of college, living in a dorm, living away from home probably for the first time, maybe experimenting with drugs, I hope not, certainly drinking a lot of beer and having a lot of wasteful nights. But at the end of 4 years, you need to be celebrated. You're going out into a tough world, and you need a good slap on the butt and wish you luck. And I was really surprised this was the commencement speaker that spent the entire time talking about herself, and rather than talking about the kids and their experiences and what they learned and how things are going to shape differently in the real world versus college. So this book that I wrote, it's out about 4 weeks. We sold, I think, last count, about 32,000 books. We get a report once a month, or I think it's coming up next Friday, so we'll know exactly. But it's out on Barnes and Noble, it's out on Amazon, it's on Books A Million, it's in a lot of independent bookstores, it's in Walmart. And there's some really fun chapters in this book. And I want to talk about a couple of the chapters today and tell you, give you a little teaser about some of the things that you're going to hear on this business show from the giants of industry that we're going to have on. And I have a couple great ones lined up. I'm going to keep it a secret until you meet them, but some of these folks, and you have to understand, a lot of people that run these giant companies are scared. They don't want to be in the public limelight because of a miscue in any type of interview that could affect their business. But we're just going to go out there and have a lot of fun and talk about things, Larry David, funny episodes that might happen in business. And one of them is I have a chapter called Never Judge a Book by Its Cover. So my dad, I've been down in Florida. Well, I went to college down here, so I've been down here. I'm 67 years old. I've been down here a long time, but I spent most of my career in Philadelphia, but I started coming down maybe 25 years ago, had a home here. So my dad and his best friend, Bob, used to play golf very early in the morning. They were early risers. So I used to go over, meet them at their golf course. It was a 18-hole golf course that had very little traffic. And this guy, Bob, would play with my dad every morning at 7 o'clock. If it was late, they would start earlier. If they could start at 6:30, they would start at 6:30. Well, Bob was a big guy, big fat guy. His shirt was hanging out of his clothes. His golf cart was a mess. He had all these junky golf balls all over the golf cart. And I never really had much conversation with Bob other than good morning. For those guys, my dad and Bob, who was my dad, both of them have since passed away, it wasn't about what you scored. It was how fast you played. You know, how'd you do today, Dad? Oh, we played in an hour and 10 minutes. Not what his score was, but how fast they played. So it was a quick round of golf. If I would go out with them at 7 in the morning, I was done by 8:15. I only played 9 holes, then I went to work. So all this time that, I met Bob and played golf with him, I never really talked to him. And he was a fun, gregarious guy, a big guy, and a slob. So anyway, my dad, in that following summer, had a surprise birthday party for my mother in Philadelphia. And he invited all his friends from Florida to come up for this surprise party. And in my corporate office in Philadelphia, I always had a morning secretary at the front desk who came in at 6 o'clock because we were in the construction business, and somebody that stayed till 8 o'clock at night. So we had a double shift. So if anybody came into the building, there was somebody always out front of the building to greet them. So anyway, I'm sitting in my office the Friday of this birthday, and she buzzes me and says to me, this guy, Bob Gordon, is at the front desk, and he has a box of donuts, and he wants to see you. So I said to myself, oh, geez, Bob Gordon's here for my mother's surprise party. Now he has nothing to do. He figures he'll come over and bother Dave for an hour in the morning, fill up an hour of his morning, have a cup of coffee and some donuts. So Bob lumbers back to my office, and he was dressed a little neater. He was dressed a little cooler than I always saw him, in the morning. So anyway, he sits down, and I said, Bob, I really don't know anything about you. We're in my conference room, we're eating donuts, and we're drinking coffee. I said, I don't know anything about you. He said, I was the largest Lloyd's of London agent in America, and I was based out in New York. And I was astonished. Never judge a book by its cover. I would have never guessed in a million years that this guy was the largest Lloyd's of London agent in America. And what's a Lloyd's of London agent? That's the premier agency for insurance for stuff that's super expensive and very hard to insure. Most jewelers use Lloyd's of London. So I said, Bob, give me a 10-minute spiel on your life, your story, how you became the largest Lloyd's of London agent in America. And he said, well, it was pretty simple. I'll give you an example. I had this client. He calls me up and he says to me, oh my God, Bob, I had a robbery last night. They stole $4 million worth of jewelry. I said, all right, let me come see you. So he went down to see his client in the jewelry district, and sure enough, the guy claimed that $4 million worth of jewelry. And Bob said to me, I know it wasn't $4 million, it was probably $2 million, but I told him I'll go and work on it. So anyway, I called the insurance company, and I'm able to negotiate a deal very quickly, claiming that it was more than $4 million, $6 million, but I'm not telling the client any of this. And I secure a $4 million settlement within the first 30 days. And I don't say anything to the client except call him and tell him I'm working on it. And the client says to me, I'm desperate for money. I'll take $3 million. Can you get me $3 million? And Bob said, hold on. Let me try and negotiate this. And Bob already has the check for $4 million in his greedy little hands. And I'm only telling you this story because Bob has passed away. I would never reveal this unless he had passed away. So anyway, the guy calls 30 days later, says, Bob, I need working cash flow. All my jewelry was stolen. You got to help me out. I need $2 million. I'll take $2 million to settle it. And Bob's saying to me, I know that was his cost, $2 million. And I said to him, look, let me do you a favor. I will lend you $2 million out of my own personal checking account so that you have cash flow. Let me negotiate with the insurance company and try and get you more. I already have them up to $3 million. But I don't want to take a check. Hold out longer. I'll give you $2 million out of my own personal money. The guy's calling about 4 weeks later and said, look, I'll take the $3 million. I can pay you back the $2 million and I'll have an extra $1 million. And Bob says, guess what? I just secured $4 million for you. And he goes to the guy's office and gives him a check for $4 million. And of course, this guy told everybody in the jewelry district, if you need an insurance agent, you have to go Bob, Lloyd's of London. He's the man. So that's how he built his career. He was an incredible guy, an incredible agent, and he had all these fascinating stories. And I sat there and I listened to the guy tell the one story after another and another. Well, anyway, that night was my mother's birthday party. And I go to the birthday party, and it's the first time I see Bob. He's in a Brioni suit. His hair is coiffed perfectly. I've always seen him a train wreck on the golf course. His hair is coiffed perfectly. And his wife, who I had never met, is wearing the most gorgeous jewelry I've ever seen in my life. When I tell you, if she fell into a swimming pool, she'd sink to the bottom. I mean, she had so much jewelry on. So I went up to him and I said, Bob, that is unbelievable. The stories you told me today, you're a gorgeous looking guy with your hair and this Brioni suit and the pocket puff and the tie. And sure enough, your wife is gorgeous and the jewelry she's wearing is unbelievable. He says, Dave, it was all stolen. I got it on the cheap after the insurance company recovered it and we owned it. So he was a fascinating guy. So that was one great story in the book. And there's another great story about this. I'm on my way to visit my little guy who was on spring break in Naples, Florida. That's the west coast of Florida. And I'm on the east coast of Florida. And I'm driving over to the west coast of Florida. He was there on spring break, and all the kids from his school were there, and it was a fun little, trip for the kids to all get together outside of school. And I drive 3 hours, and I'm about 5 minutes away from the resort. And I'm driving a fancy truck, a hyped up truck. And sure enough, there's a Mustang pulls out in front of me, and the Mustang is going like 5 miles an hour. It's a 20-mile-an-hour zone. So I go to I'm going crazy. I'm driving 3 hours and I'm saying to myself, this really sucks. I can't believe I'm waiting so long. Mustang pulls off. I shoot around him as he's pulling off. I floor it in this Lamborghini truck. And all of a sudden, the lights go flashing and I get pulled over by a police officer. I'm literally 3 miles from the resort. I drove 3 hours. So the cops have some way to shine a bright light on your side view mirror of your car. And he's blinding me with this light. And he pulls up, he gets out of his car and he walks right up to my car and he's very intimidating and he has all his gear on, his vest, he's got guns, he's got tasers. And he says to me, do you know what you did? Do you know you were speeding? Do you know you were over the limit? In a very hostile way. And the first thing I said to him was, officer, thank you for your service. I appreciate what you do. And I had my license and registration out because I could see as soon as I got pulled over, he sat in his car for a minute or two, which gave me the ability to get my license and registration out. So the cop was kind of floored that I was not argumentative. I was respectful. And I said to him, thank you for your service, officer. And he said, do you know how fast you were going? Again, he was a little less hostile, but hostile. I said to officer, look, I take full responsibility if I was going over the limit. I have no excuses to tell you. I didn't even tell him the story about the Mustang. But then again, I said, thank you for your service, officer. And I was nothing but respectful and polite to this guy. So he takes my license and registration and he walks back to his car. He says, wait here, buddy. I'll be right back. So he goes back to his car. I guess he punches it into his computer and he makes me sit there shitting in my pants for 5 minutes. And he comes back to the side of my car and he says, you know what? You were nothing but respectful and nice to me. You're driving this fancy car. You could hire a lawyer. You could torture me. You could break my balls. The judge will knock the ticket down to some minor summons. You'll pay a fine. But you were just a nice guy, and I'm going to let you go tonight. And it was a lesson I learned. I said, why should I do the, what's your badge number? Do you know who I am routine that you always see on TV, on that TV show Cops? I just was nothing but kind, respectful, and I appreciated his service. He has a dangerous job. I'm sure he meets a lot of knuckleheads and bad guys all day long. And I wasn't going to be one of those guys that night. I was tired from the ride, but I was going to be respectful of him. So that night, two people won. The police officer got respected by me, and I won because I didn't get a ticket. And I met a real American hero. And then after everything was done and said, I had an opportunity to talk to this officer, and he had served in Iraq. He was on the ground in Iraq fighting bad guys, and he was a super interesting guy. And if I was an asshole that night, I would have missed out an opportunity to meet a great hero like that. So that's another fun chapter. Then I have a fun chapter in there about a friend of mine who taught me a lesson about tipping in life. When I was in college, I did some menial jobs that were service related, and I worked on tips. And so I'm a big tipper because as a kid, I realized tipping is important. But this guy was a 50% tipper. And it was an amazing, amazing story. We fly down to Orlando with like 11 kids, and I guess we land at 9 o'clock at night. We all pile into the couple cars and we go to Disney World. We're staying with all the kids there. And we go up to Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville or whatever it is. And we have 11 kids. It's 9 o'clock. All these little kids are cranky and starved. And the manager says, you know what? It's an hour and a half wait for 11 people. We said, we'll break it up into different tables. And my friend always carried around a wad of cash like crazy. And he said to the manager, look, all these kids are hungry. Here's $100. Can you get us a table? And the manager said, look, that's very nice. I have other people waiting. I'm sorry I can't do that. He said, here's $200. Manager said, oh, wow, that's really nice. I don't think I can take it. Then my friend said, look, here's 300. These kids are starved. We really want a table. Manager said, look, I really can't take the $300. And my friend says to him, look, fella, you're going to wear out faster than I am. And he shows him his wad. And he says, you just seat us, and the two of us are going to be really happy tonight. You're going to have extra money in your pocket, and I'm going to have a table for all these kids. And sure enough, the manager said, you know what? That's the first time anybody's ever pulled that act on me. Come on, follow me. And he gave us a table, and he said, I don't want any of your money. I learned a lesson from you tonight. You were nice. You were respectful. You didn't take no for an answer, and you were willing to do whatever it takes to take care of your kids and your family and your friends. And it was a pretty cool experience. And he's taught me a lot of things about tipping in my life, and some different shows. When we have guests, we'll talk about it. But he basically says the difference between a 20% tip and a 50% tip is 30%. So if everything that you do, you spend 30% more, it will change your life infinite. It will change your life so much. If you spend whatever it is a year, an extra $3,000 or $5,000 a year, being an excess tipper, it's crazy what it'll do for you. You'll always get into a restaurant. The car parker will always get your car first. Wherever you go, people be nice to you. And you don't have to be an asshole. Just be a nice tipper and be respectful of the people that you're doing it with. But anyway, as we come to the end of this first podcast, I want to tell you this story about there's always one more chapter. So I had a home down at the Jersey Shore that I bought from this guy who was a billionaire. And he basically, at the time, sold me the house completely furnished. And coming up to the closing, my wife at the time didn't want the furniture, so I called him up and I said to him, look, really, realistically, if you can use this furniture, I really can't use it. My wife doesn't like the furniture. I said, sure, I'll take it out, but I understand you're not going to give me a credit for the furniture. I'm not asking for a credit for the furniture. Just do me a favor. If your kids want it or somebody wants the furniture, it'd be easier if you just took the furniture. So at closing, he gives me a $500,000 credit for the furniture that I didn't take in the house. I didn't ask for the credit, and I was stunned. I'm looking at the settlement sheet, and I'm like saying to myself, this is unbelievable. Why is this guy doing this? So his attorney, Joseph was the guy's name, said to me, don't worry, you're going to have to pay it back in one form or another. So about a month later, this billionaire calls me up, and he says, all right, now it's time to pay me back. I said, what do I have to do? He said, well, I want you to join this board called Defense for Democracy. It's a think tank in Washington, D.C. And I said, well, I won't be doing much thinking there. My brain's not that big, but I'd be happy to do it. And he said, it's going to cost $100,000 a year, and you're going to have to make a 5-year commitment. So I'm saying to myself, well, there's the $500,000. 1, 2, 3, it's gone, but I'm happy to do it. So at this think tank in Washington, D.C., were all these incredible titans of industry. Some are still alive, some are dead. And one of them was this guy, Bernie Marcus. Bernie Marcus was the founder of Home Depot. He started Home Depot, one of the greatest retailing companies in America. So anyway, Bernie Marcus calls me up one day because I built some houses in the St. Andrews Country Club, and he lived there in an older home. And he said, Dave, I want to buy a double lot, and I want to build my dream home. Will you come look at this lot for me? And I said, sure. So I met him at the lot the next day, and it was a gorgeous double lot. And I'm looking at the two houses that he has to tear down, and I turned to him. I said, Bernie, how old are you? He said, I'm 88. I said, you do realize it's going to take 2 years to build this mansion that you want to build, and you're not going to move into this house till you're 90. And he said, yeah, I'm really excited. This is one more chapter in my life, and I can't wait to do it. So sure enough, Bernie built this gorgeous, unbelievable house. He has just passed away at age 96, but he lived there 6 fabulous years. But he had one more incredible chapter in his life, building his dream home, something he always wanted to do. And it was a fabulous home on 2 fabulous lots. And he wanted my opinion. He knew they were fabulous lots. He didn't need my opinion. He just needed somebody to say, you know what, they're fabulous lots. He knew they were fabulous lots. So anyway, this is going to be a new fun chapter for me. I'm going to get to sit down with giants of industry, people I know for 10 years, 20 years, people that I just met, and I'm going to get to pick their brain. I'm going to hear about their successes, their failures. We're going to hear about the lessons they learned. We're going to laugh, we're going to giggle, and we're going to have a lot of fun. It's not easy doing this, a podcast right now by myself. I'm always doing one with somebody else. But this is my intro podcast. We're going to have some fun. The next podcast is going to be with a super fun guest. Hopefully I can have a relative or somebody that's close to me on who has a great brand. I want them to talk about branding. I want to have a friend of mine that owns a giant liquor company on, and he can talk about, the liquor business. I have another friend that owns all these different industries and hedge funds and things like that. He's going to talk about that. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Anyway, the podcast is going to be called the Left Foot, Right Foot Podcast. And real fast, the book explains what left foot, right foot means, but short order, it means just put your left foot in front of your right foot and keep moving forward in life, and you'll do great. You just can't give up. You have to go left foot, right foot, and keep swinging, and you'll get to where you're going. Anyway, we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later.